Great. And I am in multi-mode. All right. Oh, let me close my window because otherwise we'll get a lot of street noise. Yeah. All right. Can you hear the trains when they go by?
Yep. Yeah, I can. I can. So it's not terrible, but
Yeah.
you can hear it.
Just keeping it real. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 40, can you believe it, of the Faitheism Project podcast. My name is Alan Katz. Yeah, woohoo indeed. Woohoo for everything. My name is Alan Katz. I have always been grateful to Hebrew School for making me the atheist I am today.
And my name is Randy Lovejoy, and I am a pastor without a physical church. But I'm not alone in that these days. So maybe we'll get onto that a little bit more later. But I was at a Facebook religion gathering that I was invited to by Facebook for religious groups that are using Facebook and doing virtual work.
Yeah.
Fascinating. But anyway, that's off subject.
Well, sort of yes and sort of no. Today we are talking about spirituality and the healing process.
Yes.
Which seems kind of like a natural combination, like nothing earth-shattering there, and yet there's more to it than just that. And we'll talk among other things. I'm going to talk about a personal kind of a spiritual thing that I went through, and I know Randy's got hey, this is Randy's territory. This is his bread and butter.
That's right.
But we'll also touch upon faith healing and how that fits into the piece. It's another of those subjects that I can't believe it took us 40 episodes to get to.
That's right. That's right.
And yet here we are. So it's the summer. You've been busy traveling. I'm about to go traveling. How has your summer been so far?
It's been great. Yeah, it's been full of celebrations. Celebration of my mother, who is, I'll just say, over 85. I won't say her specific age in case she listens in and hears this. And also just of my oldest son's graduation from college. And it's just a reminder of, celebrations a part of our healing as well as spirituality as well, because it just felt good to get together with folks and celebrate. So yeah, it's been great so far. How about you? What would you say?
I'm towards the end of July. I will be traveling, getting on an airplane.
Yes.
And traveling east to go see my mother for the first time in more than a year and a half. Yeah, almost 2 years. And that's shocking. Mm-hmm. That's shocking. So looking forward to that. That's We are still living in such strange times.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, we were on, I was on a couple of planes, and it's an odd, it's not unusual. It's sort of like it was pre-pandemic, and yet it's not. So it's just this weird, which a lot of life's like that right now, right? It's like sort of like the pandemic and sort of not like the pandemic. And it's sort of like,
there's like a strange pandemic overlay atop our lives, which is, you can see well, that's how my life used to be, through the overlay, but
right.
Overlay.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like it feels like we're suffering the after effects still of the pandemic, that it's changing and opening up, but we've still got a pandemic hangover. I don't know.
Well, there are still variants. We never hit, and we're probably never going to hit, a herd immunity that would have just nipped the thing completely. The other problem is that the rest of the world is not as vaccinated as we are. So there are all kinds of variants that are being created, and this is going to be with us for a while. It's just how it is. I don't know how they're going to do the Olympics.
And even it's like when somebody gets sick, it feels like almost like people are worried immediately that it's COVID because they're sick. And I keep wanting to say to them, you remember we did actually get sick prior to the pandemic. There are other illnesses, from head colds to the flu to, they're all out there. So but it's hard when somebody's sick. Do they have COVID? It's like, no, slow down.
A funny thing happened because we were all on guard against COVID. The incidence of flu this past year was way down. In part because whenever we went out in public, we were all wearing masks,
and we weren't hanging out together as much either.
Absolutely. Now, having traveled to Asia, in Asia, when people are ill and they travel in public, they put on masks. This is not a new thing for them. Yeah. For us, it was, and there seems to be something a little instructive in, as just a way to think why are we giving pathogens such an easy time? Well, we like them. They're our friend.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is to figure out the balance between how do we just take the chances we need to take because of community, because of relationship, because of that. And then what are the chances we really don't need to take, that we don't need to sacrifice. There's got to be and I suppose we'll figure that out over time, won't we? What works, what's useful and what isn't. I don't know.
If before I walked out my front door, I asked myself a simple question: I'm healthy, I'm unhealthy. I'm healthy, okay, no worries.
Yeah.
I'm unhealthy, well, okay. Yeah. What are the implications for other people? And if one becomes capable of thinking in terms of not just the me, but the we, all right, then that's suddenly a whole other way of thinking.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that would, if one was awoke enough to say, well, but what about other people? Well, then hopefully you would go, well, okay, therefore I should wear a mask because I don't want them to get the thing that I have. It feels awful. Hopefully, but that's kind of the nature of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Is the profound changes, the healing process, and healing by way of a spiritual process.
Yeah.
And
what is illness? What is healing? What needs to be healed?
Well,
that's all of those things need to be kind of defined.
Well, let's start by what do we? Let's start by defining terms.
Well, I don't know. I was thinking maybe we should start with your story and then define terms. I don't know. I like stories, much better than dictionary definitions. I don't know about you, but I do know about you. You are a story man. So let's do the story and then we'll work on definitions after that.
And maybe there's a way that we can hybridize this thing a little bit.
Yes.
All right. So talking about healing. Now I've got a dear friend who is an alternative healer. She does Chinese herbal medicine and electro stim and really incredibly intuitive, my friend, Andrea. And she is, among other things, she's English. My wife is English. That's part of the connection. She's an equestrian. And so she has a whole history with horses. Her husband is a really bright guy, also English, and has been dealing with depression, as a lot of us do, but he suddenly discovered this horse therapy. And this was someone that he was connected to via an association of Andrea's, his wife's. And he was kind of dubious when he first went out into this little ranch near Acton to do this horse therapy, because he also rides. But this surprised him in ways that he didn't expect. And he found it was quite effective in dealing with his depression. And it isn't about riding the horse, but we'll come to that. Now, when I began to hear about this, when James told me about it, I was fascinated because, you know, knowing him and having heard a lot of his stories and the difficulties that he'd been through, that he found relief from this was quite fascinating. So when I thought I'd like to try this, all right, I bring all this up because the reason that I went there was not the reason that James went there. So I did not go out looking for healing personally. I really, I wanted to go out and be able to communicate with a horse,
Mm-hmm.
which is the therapy. But okay. So
And how long ago was this?
This is about a month ago
Okay.
that I did this. So this woman, her name is Nancy Coyne. She has began this. It's equine therapy, and her associate out in this little bee box ranch near Acton is a guy named Cisco. I think it might be short for Francisco, but Cisco is a horse whisperer, and he's the first thing. All right, so I was there with Andrea was there because she's kind of shepherding. They're evolving this thing into a therapy that they could do on a regular basis for people. We were kind of a test group as Cisco and Nancy are working this out, in all fairness. But Cisco is a horse whisperer. And there was me, there was 5 women, and Andrea and Nancy Coyne, the psychotherapist. She's a psychiatrist. She's an actual psychiatrist. And the point is to talk about why you're here. You know, there's a bit of group therapy to start with. And then you turn toward the corral and they bring in a horse. Now, these are not horses that really, some of them can be ridden, but most of them, you don't ride them anymore. Some of them are too injured to ride. Some of them, they've been abused. And they just don't trust people that much anymore. But they will open up their minds and their hearts to people if people will open up their mind and their heart to the horse. And that's the goal. And a really odd thing happens when you finally, it's your turn and you step out into the corral. And again, I wasn't looking for therapy from the horse. I wanted the horse to let me in. I wanted to commune with this horse. I wanted to, as best I can, to appreciate the world from the horse's point of view. All right. So I'm going to share a couple of pictures from my experience. Well, as I walk us through the story, let's see, there we go. And hopefully this is working. Is this working?
Yep, you're on.
Oh,
Perfect.
life is, oh, that's the wrong,
no.
there we are. That started this one. So there's Cisco, and me, I'm the guy in the purple shirt. Don't confuse me and Cisco. He would hate that. And Cisco was explaining to me how we're going to do this. And really, the first thing that I'm going to have to do is to completely empty my head of all thoughts. If I am in the least distracted, the horse has no interest in me. I've come to talk to the horse. Talk to the horse. All right. So now he brings me over to this is a mare. She's the big mare of this group of horses that live here on this little ranch. And basically, Cisco was telling me what it is that I want to do. The goal is to get the horse to come to me, and then to get the horse to move around the corral without me saying a word, just by the way that I move, just by, in essence, me thinking, walk with me, horse, walk with me. And all right, so the horse gets a little closer. I've got to clear my mind, though. I'm not there yet. And the horse is looking. The horse is curious. And then the horse, when you empty your mind, and I literally, I emptied my mind of everything. And I simply thought, what do you want to talk about? Horse. And I the horse has a human name, and I didn't want to call it its human name, so that seems so, I don't know, inappropriate. And, whatever, I just thought, wherever you are, and again, I had my eyes closed, and I thought, okay, horse, if you can hear me thinking, come talk to me. And the next thing you know, the horse is walking up to you. Oddest thing. And then the horse gets really intimate. Now, horses, so I was told, they don't really like to be rubbed on their faces. That's not their thing. They like that you can hold them by the neck, which I eventually did. I don't have a picture of that, but the horse let me. And the most amazing thing came right here when the horse and I, we were nose to nose. And the horse would exhale and I would inhale. And I would exhale and the horse would inhale. And we sat there just breathing in each other's air for a couple of moments. And then the horse began to rub its lips on my face and began to really just to get intimate with me. It was open to communing with me. And then, yeah, there's me and the horse face to face. And the horse at any moment could suddenly go, screw you. And literally it could hurt me significantly. It really, the horse's teeth are right there. That horse, if it suddenly decided it didn't like me, could hurt me. Tremendous amount of trust going here with a huge animal. So all I can tell you is in the aftermath, that experience sat with me for 3-4 days. I mean, just a kind of lovely sense of calm. And again, I didn't go looking for, I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't looking for healing, but there was something profoundly healing about letting go of me and embracing, in essence, the consciousness of the horse. And then, as we did, I mean, I was able to move the horse around, and the horse was willing to go. Really, it was like, okay, what do you want to do? Okay, I'll walk over there with you. Okay, I'll do that with you. Okay, I'll do that with you. This was the first time. And apparently, if you go back repeated times, you can begin to develop a relationship with the horse. The horse sees you and the horse knows. Now, the horse doesn't give you license. If you walk into the corral and you aren't looking at the horse, even if you've got experience with the horse couldn't give a crap about you. If you want the horse to come talk to you, you have to essentially somewhere between having to invite the horse in and meeting the horse halfway. Whichever, it starts with you forgetting about you. And that's something, I think, where the spirituality and healing begins. It's the recognition of something outside of you, if not bigger than you. And it's as you assess that relationship that maybe you didn't know you had, or that you never experienced in quite this way. It was a deeply spiritual experience. I cannot wait to do it again. And apparently, there are some ways you can do this where eventually, yes, you can ride the horse. And I'm sure that, now I don't ride horses by nature. That lack of confidence, I'm sure the horse would get immediately, which is important because that's part of the dynamic of you with the horse. So I don't need to ride. I'm much more interested in just, it was as the horse approached me, there was an odd feeling in the ether between us of a meeting of our minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my
Well,
story.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that's, one of the things that when we just started talking about doing Faitheism pre-pandemic, we talked about the awe and wonder that
Yeah.
we have in common. And that relates to this sense of being a part of something that draws us, that can draw us outside of ourselves, outside of our own heads. And I really do. I think that is a key part of spirituality, speaking broadly of it. That's key part of the spiritual experience, or
Agree.
the thing that we call a spiritual experience is when we're drawn outside of our own heads.
You and I first began this conversation with the recognition that we both felt awe.
Yeah.
And that is, awe is universal. It doesn't belong to anyone with religion. It doesn't belong to people without religion. And I think that's when we recognized that spirituality was a thing unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
it's a part of being human. I would say that spirituality is a part of what it means to be a human being. It's an experience that is possible for us as human beings.
If you have consciousness,
right,
you have spirituality, because your consciousness is a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know what our consciousness is.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, we have not a bloody clue how you and I are having this conversation.
Yeah.
We would have an easier time explaining the technology of how we're doing it than we would the technology inside our heads. We literally don't know how we're doing it.
Right. And I think the thing that, that strikes me in your story too is just, it's so interesting that the way that we access the wonder and the awe, the way that we have a spiritual experience, is getting outside of ourselves.
Indeed.
That seems to be a key component, a key experience, which, number one, that says that we spend an awful lot of time inside our own heads, inside of ourselves, because we have to do something or experience something different to get outside of our own heads. But it also begs the question of, is that a better place for us to be on a more regular basis? Rather than
outside our heads.
Outside of our own heads, is there a space that's actually better for us, or at very least, the goal is to get outside of ourselves more and more, and that way we would experience, like you said, the sense of calm, that we might experience some of these other emotions that can be very difficult to find when you're just inside your own head.
Well, I mean, as a for instance, and I think you'll relate to this, we talked in our last podcast about spirituality in sports.
Yeah.
And a runner's high. First of all, you ain't going to get a real good runner's high if you're indoors. I don't run, so maybe you can get a runner's high off a treadmill. I don't know. That doesn't seem quite as.
It's different. At the very least, it's different. If you're running it out at Mammoth Lakes or something, surrounded by the Sierras and all of the trees and the wildlife and all of that, that's a very different. And I mean, that's one of the more powerful ways that I think most of us can be drawn outside of ourselves, is by some type of natural beauty that is oftentimes is the larger, bigger than. You mentioned that, is outside of, if not bigger. Sometimes that bigness is a part of it as well. It's just realizing that even though we experience the world as if we were connected to all of it, that in reality, we're a tiny little part of the world. And there's something about when that really hits us, that we're just a small part of this huge world and universe, that takes us to a different place too. And so to me, when you're running or just walking out in a forest, for example, it can very easily draw us out in that thing that we're calling spiritual, because you realize where you actually fit in the universe, versus the way that we often experience the universe, which is that, I am struggling against everything, all the problems I need to decide, I need to solve. I don't know. It's just this all-consuming thing that tends to just weigh us down.
Well, let's all right. So it seemed like a good time to
Yeah,
define our terms. What are
sure.
we heal? What is it we're really looking to heal with our
Yeah,
spirituality?
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
now, yes, okay. There are people who believe you can apply your spirituality to cure disease. All right. Okay. We'll come to that. But that seems to me a rather facile surface way of thinking about what exactly how your
yeah.
spirituality can heal you.
Yeah, I
That
think that's
there's
a very narrow definition.
Yeah,
That
it's all about the icing when really this is a cake question.
right, because I think, I would say yes, you can be healed spiritually, but I would say the thing that would be a derivative. What you're really after is something much bigger than that, which sometimes that bigger thing can result in, some type of healing, however you want to define it. But to
To
say it's just healing, that it's just if you get your head to think in a certain way, you will be healed. You've narrowed it way down. You've made it individual. You've individualized it. You've made it a power thing.
Yes.
When in reality, you've lost that whole idea of getting outside of yourself, because suddenly it's all about you controlling everything, which is where we as human beings constantly get into trouble in the first place.
Now, here's where the atheist is gonna jump in and defend the faith healers.
Sure, sure. All right.
Now, all right, all right.
I can't wait to hear this. This will be awesome.
I say this as oh my God, I'm such a fan. Hey, my relationship with televangelists started when
Yeah.
I was a kid. I got turned on. My dad, my intensely Jewish dad loved TV preachers. He well, he did for various reasons. I think he first got turned on to well, not turned on to, but the the voice of Father Cowlin during the war, that anti-Semitic priest who got on the radio during the Second World War. But the person who got me turned on initially was Catherine Coleman.
Oh wow,
And
wow.
do you remember Catherine Coleman?
You have so much for each of us if we only knew how to cooperate with the Holy Ghost.
Something about her just. Hey, I'm still talking about her. I'm talking about her 50 years later. She's been dead for probably 50 years. But she's something about her just impressed me. And then guys like Benny Hinn, who is straight up, faith healer. I mean, that's that whole thing where he bops you and you fall over. I mean, I could watch that for hours. I eat that with a spoon.
What is
Now,
it that intrigues you about that? I mean, you touched on it slightly with the drama of it.
It's the hucksterism, but the strange thing is there is a component that works.
Sometimes.
There is.
Yeah.
There is. And there's data that says, a religious mindset, and the literature constantly confuses religion and spirituality. This is something that to this point, too many people are forcing into a wedding that does not. No, these are not wedded things. All right. When they talk about the impact that religion has on people's health, it tends to be good, because a lot of people who are intensely religious tend to be very positive minded.
Mm.
Now, whether their positive mindset is based on what some of us would call reality and some of us wouldn't is neither here nor there. It's irrelevant to them because they're happy. And as a positive mindset will probably give you better health than a negative mindset. It just goes without saying, really. So one of the things that religion does offer you is those intense good feelings, and you have a relationship with a very powerful being who in your mind is always in your pocket, you can always talk to when you need help. Well, okay, that's a tremendous amount of comfort to have at your disposal.
Yeah, I would hesitate on saying you have God in your pocket, but other than that, I agree. That part of it is where you get into trouble. Again, as a pastor,
yeah. That's
part of it where it starts to move away from healing people.
And some people, this is where we get into the faith healing the faith healer who has God in his pocket.
Yeah.
Like he can move it from pocket to pocket to pocket. That's really what I'm referring to.
And that's, again,
it's the other side.
Back to control to me. There's a control issue that if this is done as a part of someone gaining more control and power, then you've got a distortion that's going to take place.
Think of it, but again, I'm going to defy your expectations. Think of it from Benny Hinn's point of view.
Oh, do I have to?
Come on. Now,
I'm afraid to get into his mind.
Let go of Randy, the wonderful person that you are, for 2 seconds, and pretend that you could. Just pretend that it's a thought experiment. You could be Randy the rat bastard. Okay, so it's a thought experiment. Just go with it. Okay. Yeah. So now you suddenly discover that when you tell people, "I touch you, you're healthy," but you have to fall down.
Right.
And you do it, and they fall down, and they go, "I feel better." You go, "Well, that's cool."
Yeah.
And suddenly, if you're Benny Hinn, you go, "Well, this is a good gig. People love when I do this," and they walk away like they feel better. Hey, when they get home, that's not my problem. Hey, they didn't give me, when they walked in saying I got a tumor, they didn't give me all the lab work. He said I had a tumor. I said, okay, the tumor's gone. It's all anecdotal anyway. You can't lose. And when you look at the crowds that Benny Hinn pulls in, it's quite remarkable. I mean, on a certain level,
But here's the thing. To me, the reason that I would struggle even with just letting go of my own approach is that there's, to me, religion that focuses on that is not the reason that I'm a Christian. It's actually close to antithetical.
Of course.
Not because I don't believe that you can be healed by your faith. That's not the issue. It's that again, it goes back to your experience with that horse, which is that central to Christian spirituality as well is this getting out of yourself.
Yeah. What is and the question is, what is your faith able to heal? And look, if your faith can give you the positive mindset that gives your body the better chance to heal itself, then this is working exactly as you describe.
And that's fine, except again, to me, Christian healing is well beyond just the physical.
Oh, of course. We kind of laughed into the
Because what I would say ultimately in terms of what I see spirituality healing is actually more about relationships, more about community.
Sure.
Now that again, that's not to say you can't be physically or mentally healed by religion, but to me, it's much more about community and relationships and connectedness. Which again, we even hear that in your story with the horse. It's bringing back together or healing relationships or relational things that have gone wrong or wounds and hurts that you've had. That's why things like reconciliation and forgiveness are such a big part of Christianity, is that starts to get at the heart of what Christianity is trying to heal. It's actually, Christianity is trying to draw people back together under a new flag, a new banner, a new guise, and help them build relationships that are better and deeper and than relationships that most of us have experienced with other people. That's critical to the healing that Christianity is about, is community. It's beyond an individual. And I think that's where, for example, I was in Mexico working with churches there, and there was a faith healer that came in one night to a church that I had worked with some. And there was a woman there that was a stalwart of the church. I mean, in a good way, not the nagging church lady, but she was a church lady that had given all that she could to the church. But one of her legs was shorter than the other. So when this faith healer came in, he called her up. She went up, believing, trusting, and he laid her out and pulled on her leg, and it wouldn't extend to be even to the other foot, other leg. And so then finally, after trying that a few times, his summary was, you're not believing enough. So sorry, but I can't heal you. In other words, it's your problem. It's your fault. Not me. It's you. And this was a woman that was
because
stalwart of the church.
The problem is it's not trying to heal the right thing.
Yeah, right.
It's too transactional.
Yes, and he's actually going counter to the whole point of Christianity.
That's the hilarious thing about them. That's why faith healers are so funny, because they're literally they read the headline and they didn't read the rest of the article about how it actually works.
Well, and what's been fascinating to me, just in thinking about the Bible too, is the Bible's strangely agnostic about healing. And I'll tell you what I mean. Like if you think of when Moses went to Pharaoh, one of the things he did was he turned his staff into a snake, right?
Yeah.
But then the wizards of Egypt did the same thing. And then Moses' snake ate their snake, to show them. But the way the story's told, it wasn't like this can't happen or this can only happen with people that are followers of Yahweh. It was like, oh yeah, this happened. Then in the New Testament, there's a section where Jesus says, that some of you, say, Lord, Lord, didn't we heal in your name? And I say, get away from me, I never knew you. So again, there's kind of this sense in the Bible that yes, healing happens and it's possible and it can happen from all sorts of sources, but it's not the core issue. It's not the core thing, because there are people that can even be healing people in Jesus' name that have completely missed the boat and are not in a connection with Jesus. Now, that's a weird thing, but an important critique that the Bible makes on spirituality and healing.
But it all goes down to, what is it you think you're healing, and what does spirituality really heal that gives such a huge advantage when you can you can use it to your advantage.
And that's that Jesus obviously has lots of healings and things in the Gospels, and I think it's fairly. I think there's a broad swath of scholars that would say, look, in some way this guy healed, that stuff went on with his ministry. I don't know how much they'd define it, but they'd say it was happening so often, and even the people against him were talking about it, that something had to be going on. But again, the point there is a lot of the healings that are described in the Gospels were healings that would allow the people to then re-enter Jewish society as full-fledged members. So leprosy, leprosy as it was defined in that day, and as it was handled in that day, meant you were excluded from society. If you were healed of that, you're included in society once again. Right. So there was a lot of that it wasn't just healing for healing's sake, but it was healing so that those people could be full members of the community of God once again, which again gets to, what are we healing? What's the point of the healing?
The problem is when spirituality attempts to heal what it can't heal,
right?
It can make a real mess of things, because there's some things that absolutely no, it can't heal. Yeah. It cannot heal a pathogen. It can't. It cannot. Your spirituality is not going to defend you against COVID-19. It's not going to protect you against polio or rubella or ringworm. It's not.
Well, and that gets more to kind of the definition of faith, which is, because again, what a lot of people would say in response to that is, no, but if I believe in God strongly enough, then I won't get those things. But that's where the question is, what is faith? What is this thing called faith?
But you know, you know who laughs at that most? Pathogens. Because pathogens don't care why silly humans do dumb things, that why they don't protect themselves against the pathogen. You know, a virus like the coronavirus, it's very clever. It's figured out it can only reproduce if it gets inside our cells. It's the whole point of its existence is to get inside our cells.
Well,
that's it. There's nothing else on its menu.
And the fact is, in any of the other pandemics that humans have gone through, it wasn't that the unbelievers died and the believers lived. I mean, that's just not what happened. You even had a number of people that I think showed deep spirituality by continuing to work to care for.
Sure. Yes, of course.
Then got it and then died. But that's not because of a lack of faith. It was actually because they were actively living.
But they were healing some. But they were also working to heal, and they were healing the spirit of the people that they were tending to, and that is the point of the exercise.
Well, and again, the selflessness of saying, "I want to care for these people, even though I may be harmed myself," gets closer to the kind of spirituality we're talking about, where you're getting outside of your own head. Because if you were solely in your own head, you'd be like, no way, I'm out of here. I'm going to go hide in a cave alone until this thing passes by and then come back out again. Well, that's not spirituality. You know, that may be rational, but it's not spiritual, you know. So they're actually embodying the very healing that we're talking about by, you know, taking a chance with their lives to care for people. That is a spiritual act right there. You know,
what is, if the whole point of spirituality is to one purpose, why are we here? Why are we doing this? But also association with community, with the community you have with the cosmos, and the community you have with the rest of the humans around you, and not just the humans, the rest of the planet too, because you have a relationship with that as well.
Sure.
And if you dump on that enough, hey, you know, gosh, there's the town of Lytton, British Columbia. You hear about what happened in Lytton, British Columbia? 3 days running up until yesterday, they broke heat records, hitting 112, 100. I mean, and today within half an hour, the whole town caught on fire.
Really?
Yeah, Lytton, British Columbia. The whole town of they had to abandon the whole town. The whole town caught on fire. Well,
sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's, I mean, I think that's, you know, it's living within a network of relationships and recognizing that you're just one part of that. And how do you live in a way that is going to, you know, provide the most good for the most.
We are all connected. We are. It's just, there are plenty of people live in denial of the fact that we are all connected.
Yeah.
Sure. But they're not having the kind of never mind successful, happy. To me, happy is successful. I know plenty of successful people who are not even remotely happy.
Right.
Their idea of success and my idea of success are not the same thing.
Well, and I think that's an interesting deal, is success and healing. How do those things relate to each other? You know,
I mean, so being successful is a healing of its kind, but succeeding at things does not. You don't learn anything from it. Well, all you learn from success is that your shit doesn't smell. Well, it does.
I mean, I think there are people that are successful, but in a way that is deeply spiritual, and then there are people that are deeply.
What are they succeeding at? What do they succeed? If they're succeeding at just adding to their bank account, then that they're not really. They're just accumulating stuff that they will not be able to take with them at the end.
Yeah, a sermon I heard just this last Sunday, that the pastor was saying, "Look, when we start our lives, you know, a lot of times in our immaturity, we think it's all about things." You know, and then we may move from there and think it's all about experiences. He says, but the older I get, the more I move from experiences to relationship. That it's really all about the relationships that we have as people. And to me, that if your success has a relational impact for the good with brought more and more people, if that success facilitates that, then go for it. However, a lot of times the success tends to make us focus more and more on ourselves and see ourselves as being the center of the universe, and everybody else is there to serve us. And, you know, it doesn't promote spirituality. And I think that's the challenge. You know,
what spirituality can do, unlike few other things, is because of what it's healing, is to heal our ability to deal with it, to relate to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And even restore
by getting right with
those
ourselves first, hopefully.
To restore some of those relationships, to heal the wounds that we've suffered from relationships that were abusive and dysfunctional, to enable us to develop a kind of community that is a place of honor, respect, and encouragement, all that.
After first nourishing self.
Well, and a lot of times I think the reason we have to nourish ourselves first is because we have not been nourished by the community we've been brought up in. I mean, I think there are people that have been brought up in a solid community, and so it's all about just jumping straight from there to how do I help others? But most of us, it's like we've got to do some internal healing before we're going to be able to produce good in other people's lives, just because we're limping into this because we've been wounded seriously.
How can you make it right with other people if it's not right inside your own head?
Right.
You've got to you've got to make peace of a kind with all of this and with all of the people around you first, before you can even hope to have a modicum of happiness.
Although
if you're always at war with the micro and the macro.
Yeah. And I'd agree, except for I just wouldn't make it sequential, because what I've found is it's like I'll do some internal healing, but then I need to actually engage others to heal some more. So it's not like, well, let me get me handled first, and then I'll care for other people. It's like, no, that's not it. It's there's internal work that needs to be done, but a lot of times the healing is exactly like in these Faitheism podcast conversations, right? In our interacting with one another, learning from one another, being shaped.
I absolutely agree. Unless you can go off and be a hermit in the desert,
right?
And really be a complete island unto yourself, which I think you're missing. You're missing out on the best part of being alive. It's not just the quantity of life, it's the quality of life. And the more quality comes from the more relationships. And so if your spirituality allows you to find the peace that allows within, that allows you to find the peace without, well, then yes, you will be a happier person, and happy people attract other happy people, or they attract people to them who want to be happy. You have the secret.
Random nerd note here. When a lot of the kind of desert father monasticism kind of stuff developed in Egypt a long time ago. But at that time, going out into the wilderness wasn't escaping. It was actually going out into the scary places where all the untamed spirits and chaos and everything was. And so when a lot of the desert fathers, they went out there to do battle with the spirits, the spiritual, all of that, whereas for us, a lot of times it's more like that's an escape, but it was actually the opposite. For them, staying in community with people was the easier path. So I always thought that was
they went out to deal with all their inner demons.
Yeah, which for them weren't strictly inner. I mean, for them,
yes, of course. Yeah. But ultimately, the world's, they, when was Jeremiah? Did he spend time out in the desert? He must have. You can't be writing Jeremiah unless you've spent some time out in the desert. That's just got to be a fact of life.
Well, and I mean that's early in Jesus' ministry. He went out to the wilderness, out into the desert, and that's where he was tempted. And it's that same. What's funny to me is a lot of churches talk about, hey, let's go on a retreat. The idea being you're pulling out of life to go into the wilderness. But it was actually the exact opposite for a lot of spirituality was like, that's not, you don't retreat to the wilderness. You go to the wilderness to do battle, to do spiritual battle. I just always thought that was intriguing because in our world, it's kind of flipped around. It's the opposite of that. But anyway, just a random.
Funny how that always seems to work out. It would seem, I'll bring it around here.
Yes.
That, and we've but scratched the surface of spiritual healing.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. I just, we could do hours on this. But it certainly
Sometimes
seems like
we got to talk. I wanted to share at some point, not this one, but a few experiences where I was drawn out of myself, and I'd love to share those. And
well, you should. I don't know why you didn't talk about them now.
Well, it would take a little while. So, but I thought that was another part I'd love to. So,
well, now we've got a sequel coming here.
That's right. That's
for
right.
sure. If at the end of the day, spiritual healing makes it easier to be part of the larger community around you, it would seem that the ultimate spiritual healing is learning really how to do unto others. Mm-hmm. That in order to do unto others, you must first get out of your head.
Right.
That there are others who need doing unto.
And that it's such a critical thing for all of us, everybody that's listening. I think given that we've been in this pandemic and in this seclusion in some way, we've gotten more in our heads. And I think we're still very much in our heads, even as a country. And I think just this idea of spiritual healing, of really trying to find ways like Alan has with horse, like I have in my faith, finding ways to get out of your head on a more regular basis, even if it's just go walk in a forest, or something. Mm-hmm. I think that would be really healthy for us individually, probably for our families, and definitely for our country as a whole, if we would get out of our heads for a while, just so we can think straight. I still feel like we're thinking in a very odd, dysfunctional way as a nation. And if we could just give ourselves a little time to start thinking right again. And one of the ways we get there is through this spiritual healing we've been talking about. So,
and on that bombshell.
Good to hang out. And hey, everybody, great to have you with us, and look forward to some future conversations, because we're over 40 now. So that means
but you don't look a day over 39.
That's right. And we've got wisdom and experience that's just
getting
started.
Because we're 40.
That's right.
Well, on into the 40s then, and who knows where that's going to take us.
Oh yeah.
Always a pleasure, Randy. And now I got questions I got to ask you about your time in the desert.
Definitely. Yeah, I actually took a trip to the Sinai. I should tell you that one too. It's literally the desert. So we'll have to get into that. Maybe next week we should just jump right in. I don't know. What do you think?
Hey, my mind's open.
All right. I bet after that horse, man, your mind's totally open. I mean, seriously.
I can ride places now. I gallop. We'll see you next time, everybody.
All right.